Welcome to today's webcast on mergers and acquisitions and how to sell your company. My name is Stefan Emmert. I'm a director at Base Launch, which is a platform that launches, finance and builds companies towards raising their first institutional venture financing, which is typically a CSA round or similar activities. We are operated in close collaboration with several pharma companies and domain partners, and KPMG is actually one of them. Now, Caroline and Peter, I looked this up just before our conversation, and KPMG is, together with Roche and J&J, one of our founding partners. So we're really happy to have you with us for such a long time and for the great collaboration we had experienced over the years. And many of our companies are already in the clinic, quite deep already, or have been sold. So I'm quite eager to talk with you about how to actually sell a company, because also for our companies it becomes very relevant, especially since the IPO markets are largely shut down right now. So exits are usually happening through M&As. But before we go there, I would like to have both of you introduce yourself briefly, your backgrounds, but also what you're doing at KPMG. So Caroline, I'll let you first introduce yourself.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Stefan, also for having us here and the opportunity to speak today. So I'm a transfer pricing and value chain management director. So I help companies to set up efficient structures from a legal, from a tax, from an infrastructure perspective. I wasn't always in this field, so I started off way back when as a chemist and then transitioned slowly as a chartered accountant and then into tax consulting. And since joining KPMG around 8 years ago now, I've been working with Peter and his team basically to help biotech companies set up appropriately, grow their businesses and hopefully exit profitably as well. So really excited to explore that with you today.
Right, many thanks and excited to have you on. Peter, over to you.
Thank you, Stefan. Thank you for having us here. I am Peter Mozarov. I'm part of the Life Sciences Strategy practice at KPMG Switzerland. I'm a PhD molecular biologist by training, so biotech is basically my life. I have been working at investment funds, at consultancies, and here at KPMG I am leading the commercial and deal efforts from the Life Sciences Strategy perspective. Sometimes we need to involve colleagues from tax, sometimes from transaction services. Sometimes we're working really close with M&A colleagues if it comes to an M&A deal, but if it comes to biotech, then I'm really proud and happy to be a part of it.
So I've heard already many important topics like M&A, taxes, advisory service. Maybe before we dive into the topic, if you could give a quick holistic overview over KPMG and its activities generally, but also focused on specific on M&As.
Yeah, well, I think sometimes I'm also surprised at everything that KPMG does. So, also for smaller biotechs that need audit support services, you have a very strong audit practice that's really focused on the life sciences industry. Then you have advisory services. I'll let Peter talk more about that. My field is tax and legal, and this is really looking at getting setups appropriately, and also for M&A transactions. It can make a humongous difference both for investors and also the initial founders, how such a deal is struck from a tax and legal perspective. And then, of course, all the consulting activities as well. And I don't know, Peter, if you'd like to touch more on those other aspects.
Yeah, it's true. It is a privilege to work with colleagues who can support the company from the beginning till the sale or to exit otherwise. We have been working with really early stage companies, helping with incorporation if I'm speaking about the Life Sciences Strategy Group, we are supporting in the R&D space, in licensing space, in quality, in manufacturing, in helping commercialize medicines. Together with Caroline, we have supported build-ups of commercial organizations for biotechnology companies, and down to lifecycle management, and even to areas like your SAP and other IT solutions that some of our management consulting colleagues are supporting. We're able to basically do everything.
Okay, so really the full spectrum, right? Okay, great. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say, I think what can be helpful is just taking a question that a biotech company may have and being able to assess it from all these different perspectives, because especially now with all the volatility and the geographic markets, you have an issue. How can you solve it to make sure there's no leakages anywhere?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. So what I wanted to do is kind of start the process from start to finish, or the discussion, you know, when you start, how you start, and go towards the more technicalities of an acquisition. But so let's really start at really the beginning, when to actually start thinking about an exit.
Yeah, so my guess is that if you're a scientific founder of a company, then probably your focus is on the compound, on the asset, on the product, on developing it, on the company, not on exit, be it IPO or an M&A. But in the reality, as soon as you take your first equity round, you are taking a commitment to your investors to take care of their funding, and thus consideration of an exit is really important as soon as you are raising money. So really understanding what exit routes are available is important before you are going into your seed round. I think Caroline could speak a little bit more about that, but the seed round is really the point in time when you are establishing the groundwork for how company will develop later, and it is important not to forbid any options and to enable flexibility down the line.
So really understand your stakeholder and what they want, right? Like the main asset of a biotech is obviously the team and the science, but a big part of it is the IP. Are there any considerations to be done there at the get-go? Maybe Karen, over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, the IP is probably the most important asset you're going to have in your company, and so that will attract, also from a tax perspective, the lion's share of any value when you exit. So it's really important to think about where you place your IP. And I mean, companies based in Switzerland have already quite a big advantage that Switzerland is an extremely advantageous location from an IP protection perspective, but also in terms of a tax perspective. And I mean, Basel is a case in point here. So it is just important both to set it up correctly, but then also to maintain and review what your operations are like, because it's not just the legal ownership of your IP, it's also where are your scientists, where are the decision makers who actually determine the route and the strategy of your development. And all of that will have an impact on where profits are recognized upon the exit. And that's also something investors think about when they look at your organization.
Yeah, so we've kind of focused now on the setups, right? And like to get it all right. Is there anything people can do to kind of position themselves to an acquisition by a company, you know, the things they're doing, the people they're talking to, or is it really just setting it up correctly and then executing about on your plans? Or would you advise to put these plans already with the back in mind that maybe someone could buy the company eventually, or you in other times an IPO, which we'll not cover today for obvious reasons? But
yes, thank you, Stefan. So I'm coming from strategy side, so that's my consideration is that the infrastructure is a sort of hygiene factor that just has to be right. But the way you're driving the deal, this needs to be a real work of the founders and of the management of the company, and it really starts with awareness. So that any deal needs to start with making companies aware that you exist. And as a founder, you have to reach out early to the R&D teams, to the business development teams of pharma companies to create awareness of your technology, of your asset. You got to understand so that where you will be able to differentiate later on. It is also important to exchange with them to also understand what is really the unmet need and what assays could be differentiating already in the early stage on, so that you are creating curiosity from their side and also building trust in the science and in the robustness of the things that you are doing.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. But the one thing we see often is, and I think that's equally important, is that companies often come with something without either real benchmarking, right? Or then just saying hypothetically why they're better. And we've heard that time and time also from our partners, but also generally, even funds that are going to invest. Like, if you don't have the data going into a competitive field why your solution is better, then it's a really uphill battle to get anything done. So I do think, and that also, it's not just the science, right? But these are a lot of commercial considerations too, like what's the current treatment landscape, what will it look like, and then you go backwards from there to really start planning what you actually profile your assets against. So I think that's a very important setup, and the way you're operating with the whole commercial input, I think is very important, even there on the early stages.
Every buyer will perform their due diligence, which will not only be scientific, but they will also spend time on the commercial access side and also see so that what is in the development in the competitive space, so they will find it out. So it's important to at least do something upfront to really know what questions you're going to be getting in diligence.
Yeah, I agree. So now we focused a lot on, let's say, how you get going, right? And let's imagine a company got going, the setups are okay and everything. They're doing what they should do. They've acquired first, let's say, seed financing or even more. But it's still in early stage. Do you see any differences on how early stage companies get acquired and more late stage companies? Is there a difference in the process, in the reach out, in anything?
Yeah, I think that there is a well-known saying in the biotech world that biotechs are getting bought, not sold. And basically this is 100 times more true for early stage companies. I think that those early stage deals, preclinical in particular, they are more often than not buyer driven. So that if a buyer is seeing that this asset is really differentiated, this area is really hot, there is some fear of missing out happening on the pharma side, then they are actively reaching out to those companies with differentiated technologies to acquire them. So these deals are in a way serendipitous. So they are unpredictable. Sometimes
it happens.
But if a company is later in development, if they have clinical proof of concept, or even if they're commercial, then the pool of buyers is far larger, and then it makes sense to start a formal process that would, in the end up in the best offer to the founders and investors of the company.
I completely agree on that, and I've seen that live hand, or we've seen that live hand. It's actually interesting to watch that. Tefterra is a company backed years ago. They got acquired very quickly, really, really early based on the technology platform. And if I recall this correctly, and now time has gone, so I think I can tell that, is what happened is they went to a conference, got connected with a biotech company, with a very large US company, that saw their platform really complementary, and then they immediately bought them, like within weeks to months. So complete serendipity, no process, no nothing. But now let's zoom in on the later stage acquisitions. Let's say in the clinic, or phase 1, phase 2, or even further advanced. How do you actually start that process? Because let's say you have a good phase 2 readout, and you could do the phase 3, but it's a huge financing round. So maybe you also explore to sell the company. How would you start that?
It will still be me. In this case, you always start with strategizing. So you need to still think a little bit with the end in mind, and you need to understand who is the most likely buyer of the company. What arguments are you going to be presenting them with? How are you going to run the process? With whose help as well, because the help of a good investment bank or a company like ours actually has a value in increasing the deal value and the likelihood. So once the strategy is in, you need to start developing the documentation. And the preparation is very important because, Stefan, as you said, sometimes things are happening extremely fast and you need to be prepared for this fast-paced deal environment. So generally, you start with an outreach with an anonymous teaser of a company that is demonstrating the key technology differentiators, key asset items. You usually go targeted to companies that are already pre-identified as the likely buyers. So that's those pipeline gaps, those technology gaps, those complementarities are very important there. And importantly is a personal outreach. What you said that you went to a conference, that it is actually a very important parameter. So these decisions are made in person, and BD teams, they are also bombarded by multiple opportunities very often. So if you want to increase the chances of being taken seriously, it is much better to present in person there. Then, once the confidentiality agreements are signed, then you are given access to broader data. There could be an information pack that is then given to the parties that have indicated interest and signed the confidentiality agreement, and you also indicate a date for non-binding offers. Non-binding offers are important to set the framework and also to demonstrate which buyers are able to come up with an acceptable term. From this point, you are given access to data room, due diligence starts, that then hopefully ends in receiving binding offers. If you're lucky, even getting to some sort of an auction process that ends in a executed deal. But again, so be mindful that it is quite a feat for most biotechs to attract multiple buyers at the same time. Hopefully, you will be in this situation one day.
So, yeah, go ahead, Karen.
And I think, as Peter said, it is such an intense and quick process. And ideally, the aim is to get everything in terms of governance and documentation already available before you start this process. So even one level back, having all your hygiene ready and available can make also the interaction with the buyer much more attractive and just give a much better impression of how your company is run and structured. And that can also be an extremely, attractive factor for investors.
Nowadays, you get that a lot, the whole pricing situation, right? It is a big topic. So without going into the details, but at what point in time should a biotech start thinking about, how to price their drug? Because often at the very beginning, you look that it's competitive, but there's almost no way to go into hardcore pricing yet. And I would think that in this process, it's also equally important to have a first idea on, what you actually, obviously who to sell to, but also what you're charging, right? Would that be true?
Yeah, absolutely. And so in the end, the decision is made on the business case. So for the buying party, for the buyer, it will be important to have idea. So what is the business case behind this molecule? And pricing is an absolutely essential step there. So it is important to see that is your differentiation going to be good enough against the current and future standards of care, so that you're able to demand the pricing that will be beneficial to your investors. So at least making some sort of a high-level study to understand where is the need, and also how to incorporate pricing considerations into your clinical development. By the way, it's a very important point, is an absolutely essential step here. Of course, now with most favored nation talks, it is all up in the air. Nobody knows how the industry is going to look like in a couple of years from now, but I think there is still a band within which you are reasonably able to operate.
But then today it's even more important to basically keep an open mind and also have all the scenarios laid out and also get help on that one, I guess, because that's something which many are probably not too much used to.
Yes.
Right? Okay, now that's interesting. Now, staying on, let's imagine there's the data room, let's first non-binding term sheet comes in. Is there a way to build traction or like to build competition in when would you reach out? Well, obviously I guess you always have to reach out to others, but how do you actually best build competition in an exit scenario? Like, is it bottom up? Or one of your investors knows the CEO of another company, they call them. What are the little tips and tricks you would do there? Or there's none and you just...
Will it be about? Go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that having a really tightly orchestrated process is the most important piece. So that you need to be mindful of what information you are sharing. You need to be clear on the timelines for your term sheet submissions, for non-binding, binding, for the CDAs. You need to be careful about how you are playing with information that you are disclosing to different parties, so that there is a competitive tension happening. So that's building curiosity and building the perception of safety and security, that this asset is really as good as it looks on paper, is very important. And I would want to stress here that the management sessions are of an utmost importance. We have seen buyers walking away just because the founder has done an answer that was not precise enough, or actually oppositely disclosed the risk in a too bluntly way that scared off a buyer. So the recipe for this is really just practice.
Yeah,
Practice
and managing the
those
people
management.
well, right?
Yes,
And
correct.
educational dry runs almost, like
Exactly.
before you start.
Exactly. In the end, every deal is a personal decision.
Yeah.
Humans are performing these decisions, and so emotion plays as strong role as the data.
Okay, no. So we've opened this discussion on how do you set up a company for an exit. Like, I am sure, Karan, that there's many considerations on the structuring of the IP and any other thing when you sell the company and when you've closed that process. So maybe you can comment on that a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as we mentioned, I think the most important would ideally be to set it up appropriately from the start, but it's never too late. I mean, we've seen a lot of companies restructure. There is, of course, an associated cost and effort with doing it, but it's much better to start that process late than never. So ideally, the time frame to really look at your structure is around 12 to 24 months before you plan to sell. I know it sounds like a long timeline, but there are some kind of holding clauses from a legal perspective that also make this really important to start looking at it early. And then, okay, well, let's look at the main exit routes, right, for a potential founder. You have, a wholesale share of your company, which is a share deal, selling off just individual assets, which would be an asset deal, or something in between, a hybrid, so placing or spinning off your assets into a separate vehicle, which would then be sold as shares. And I mean, all of these come with different pros and cons, both for the founders and also the buyers. And I mean, if we take one recent example, which is J&J's acquisition of the Jersey Therapeutics from Numab, so a very nice Swiss story. This deal was actually very interesting because it was one of the hybrid options. So it was a sale of shares by Numab, but it was acquired under US GAAP as an asset deal by J&J. So it was kind of a win-win solution for both companies. If we take just the asset deal component of it for J&J, they had a few benefits of that. So first of all, they could pick and choose exactly just the one asset that they wanted. This came without any historical liabilities or risks. It also came relatively straightforward in that they could depreciate or amortize the asset directly in the US, so saving a lot of taxes there, as well as the R&D expenses that could be basically recognized immediately. So actually a very, very attractive deal for them. You have to think though as well of the flip side. So if a company were to actually sell an asset directly in Switzerland, for instance, they would recognize that immediately as a gain. And unless you have loads of carry forward losses, which as a biotech you may, that would be immediately taxable, and again taxable if you distribute up the profits. So actually not always the most attractive option for a seller.
Then it becomes almost like a licensing, right? But disguised as an exit into a separate entity.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I mean, you do then so you do then sell off the entire shares. It can be tax neutral in terms of the gain on the holding company, and so it's just potentially much more attractive to do it this way.
But this setup is something I imagine that does not come up at the exit discussions. That's something you have to prepare way in advance, right? You can't suddenly flip this into a new asset, into a new spin-out basically with just the IP and do it in the discussion. You have to be prepared and you need to have that set up before, I assume.
It goes back to what we were saying about giving yourself as much optionality as possible. So we have had exactly this discussion with a number of companies that we've worked with. So the question is, if you have a platform with multiple indications, should you spin off these different indications into different legal entities? And the answer is always, it depends. And if you're an organization where the governance and the management of all of these indications is handled quite independently, it can be actually very beneficial to separate out, the treatment and administrative oversight of these into separate legal entities. But if it's really, one group of people doing everything, actually to separate out the asset and then have to, fit in all the different expenses and transactions across multiple, companies can be very administratively burdensome, and consolidation may just be the smarter option.
Okay, so basically it means this is a good way forward, but it's not as simple as it sounds when you read the press release that it's done, right?
No, there was a lot of, I'm sure, a lot of preparation and effort. And, I think timing is the critical thing here, because also you don't know what the buyer has a preference for.
Yeah.
So important is just, to have your clear cap tables, ensure you minimize your liabilities as much as possible, and just be prepared that they may wish to do that spin out and have the asset clearly evaluated at that point to be able to do that quickly.
Okay, so now let's actually, as a last, zoom in on the more typical exit, just selling the company. Is there any advice you can give there, and any insights you would have, or that's probably the cleanest situation, right?
Yeah, exactly. It does give the seller, especially in Switzerland where you have no capital gains tax, right? Normally the cleanest exit, and it is the easiest to manage in terms of passing off any historical liabilities and risks directly off, so you're no longer responsible for that, depending on the terms agreed, of course. So that is beneficial. And then, as I mentioned, it's just having your governance clearly in place, having the ownership structure clean. And I think messy structures like a lot of different subsidiaries or JVs, that can really slow down the process. So having your structure cleanly set up, ideally in a jurisdiction which is tax efficient, has a lot of treaty benefits. You filed your treaty form so that you have that all set up. I think that can be very attractive for a potential buyer, that everything is kind of ready to go.
Okay, great. This was really informative. And I imagine that many of the topics we discussed would also come up in an eventual IPO, where you have the whole public scrutiny coming in. So you should also have a very stringent setup. But let's also, given the markets we are right now in, focus that maybe, hopefully next time when the markets have opened up. Let's see. And I think with that, we should close. So many thanks for these valuable insights. It was a really interesting discussion. And so we are closing now, but if anyone is in this space and interested to learn more, or actually is in the process or starts this process, I'm very free to reach out to my colleagues. And if anyone wants to start a new company, our doors are always open. Our homepage is very, you'll find our emails, so we want to be bombarded. With that, maybe you not that much as me, but I guess you too, right? So we're all very approachable. Yeah. So with that, let's close for now. Again, many thanks for the great discussion and the great conversation.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for coming on.
It was our pleasure.
Thank you.